So I want to be sure that I'm heard. So if I'm heard, good. um, I think this is a cool event, man. I think what you guys are doing are amazing. I think it's a beautiful thing altogether. But before I go into anything, I would just like to take a moment in prayer. So if you can for a minute, just close your eyes with me and take a deep breath. Father God, we ask that you can come in and just do what you can only do. The only thing that you can do, fill us up, pour us out, fill my heart up with your Holy Spirit, fill my mind up, allow me to carry your message and do what you want me to do. Whatever, you can have all of me, take all of me. I don't want any bit of pride, ego, or any of that stuff. Just take all of me and use me, God. Use me for your will and to do your work. And I ask all this in your name. Amen. So, I guess a good place to start would be to talk about the Spirit. My life, it wasn't always a good life. I'm currently a resident advocate at Resilience Recovery Center for Young Men. Deal with about 16 to 28-year-olds for the most part. A lot of good kids, a lot of high-profile kids, and some of them are not. And it's just an amazing job to be in service. To do some other work other than my selfish and self-centered ways. It wasn't always like that. I grew up in Newcastle, Delaware. I'm the youngest of 4 boys. My father was a violent man, to say the least. What people call child abuse, we called discipline. And that's just how it was. And I was raised in like a Catholic home, and like we went to CCD classes and stuff like that. And I got beat a lot, and like I loved superheroes, and I loved like my thing was like I had three older brothers, and one of my older brothers at the time named Joey, and he was like the man in the neighborhood, and everyone in our neighborhood just wanted to fight. We were like, I was raised and bred in like an environment of like fighters. We always wanted to fight, in my family anyway. We wanted to be like a fighter and the best of the fighters and stuff like that. And my brother Joey was one of them, and I wanted to be like my brother Joey. And the cool thing is like I was afraid. It was a lot of fear in my household. I'm the youngest of 4, like I said, so it's like I had my dad who was like, you're going to get it from Pop no matter what. And then it was like trying to maneuver my way through the day without getting like punishment from my brothers or their friends, who I always tried to hang with because I always wanted to be something other than myself. So I would watch Rocky and I wanted to be Rocky. I watched Rambo and I wanted to go get an army knife. It didn't matter what it was. I watched superhero. I'd seen Spider-Man and I wanted to have web slingers and all that stuff. But I loved comic books. I grew up on superheroes and stuff like that, and like that was kind of like my way out of reality. I loved like where it took me at the Marvel universe or DC universe or whatever, and I just wanted to be in a different place where there was like heroes. And like I remember just like praying, and I didn't even know I had no relationship. I had a conception of God, but I had no relationship with God or that power. And like I remember just wanted to be that and praying like, yo man, like please make me like Spider-Man, And like I wanted to protect people and like help people and stuff like that. And I'm not sure what happened, but in my household, the way to tell you how I'm awake, and I can't just sit here and tell you how spiritually awake I am, because you'll never know my struggles or how I fell asleep to begin with. So, needless to say, what I will anyway, I grew up in that environment, and I spent a lot of time in violence. My whole life was pretty much violent. I fought a lot. I ended up in prison. I stole everything. I lived a life of crime. And like the heroes in my community were like the local drug dealer, Kenny, and other people that I looked up to and wanted to be like. And that was like who I wanted to be like. So I would do whatever I had to do to achieve that goal. And I spent a lot of time in prison doing that. 15 years of my life in prison, and I wish like that was the end. And I remember getting stabbed out in front of my neighborhood, and my friends ran, and I remember saying like that's the reason like I fell off the cliff, and like that's the reason that's the start of it. And then I remember my house burning down, and that was the start of it. And I had all these different reasons on why I went down this path, and it was always outside circumstances that I would tell people made me like I was. You don't understand, man. You don't understand what it's like. You don't get it, man. And that's how I would always, present myself, as like, you don't know, I know, you would do it too if you were me. And so I got involved in drugs and alcohol and parties and more violence, and it was a difficult life, and it was all my doing. So I guess the way that I put my spirit to sleep is like, I remember my dad had this gray metal thing, and he kept like receipts for contracts. He was a general contractor. He had contracts, receipts, and he had money for jobs, cash. And I knew he had it in there because I was a snoop, and of course I was a thief. And this is an early age, very young. And I remember going to the stores, and I would steal comic books and steal baseball cards and steal figurines of superheroes and stuff like that. And I would set them around my bed, and to try to protect me from whatever was to come in the dark, because I was afraid of the dark, and also I was afraid of my father. And none of that stuff protected me. Things happened, and that's just how it went. So I remember I hated my dad. I hated my dad for the punishment he inflicted. Me and my brothers would have discussions on causing my father physical harm and things of that nature. And I remember just like being in that just angry, very hyperactive, act out violently and uncontrollable fits of rage, taking to doctors, therapists, group homes, whatever they could to try. So to say that my parents didn't try to get me help is an understatement. However, nothing had worked for me. So anyway, I had a complete. I had a completely justifiable reason to take anything from my father. I didn't like him. I didn't care for him. So I would do anything to take anything from him. And that's just the bottom line. Like I would take anything from my dad. And it was justifiable in my head to do it. So I go to the gray thing that I know he keeps in his dresser. And I go into the dresser. I open it up. And I go into this gray thing. And I remember popping it open and seeing the cash. And I remember something on the inside. Something in here in my heart. Something... Even though in my head I'm like, whoa, what is that? Because I had every justifiable reason to take anything from him. I remember to go clip a 20 out of his gray thing, and I remember pulling it out, and everything on the inside of me said, don't do that. It was, as we were kids, and I'm sure you can relate, when I was a kid, it was loud and almost an audible voice. It was almost like screaming in my head, don't do that. And I have to say, it wasn't because of the consequences. I faced the consequences regardless of whether I stole something or I didn't. Maybe a little more severe, didn't matter. I had the justification, the reasoning was there. I hate him. What's the difference? So what? I'll take all his money, or whatever. And yet I still felt that internal feeling that I can only describe as God consciousness that told me, don't do that, man. And I did it anyway. And I wanted to get the mini bike down the street. And I remember taking a 20, and then I remember going to my brother, who we just had a discussion about this the other day, my brother Chris, and I said, yo, I got a 20. And he was like, cool, man, we'll cut grass and get the rest. And I was like, I'm not cutting no grass to get nothing. F that. And although I felt guilty and ashamed, my goal was to say, you know what, if I get to the mini bike, the outside solution, if I get to the mini bike, I'll feel okay. And I remember going to clip another 20 and another 20 and another 20 until I had old $80 for the mini bike. And yet I felt extremely horrible, disconnected, and shameful on the inside. The inside internal feeling was just, oh man, devastating. And I remember going to get the mini bike, and I remember the goal was like for me, and as you were a kid, I don't know what it was, were you stealing or whatever, but something in you told you, don't do that. We had it. We all have it. And the fundamental idea of God is that deep down in every man, woman, and child. We all have it. We all grew up where even if it was something that we had no experience with, even if it was something like no one said, yo, this is right and this is wrong, something in us would tell us something was wrong, even though we had no experience to tell us, or no teaching to tell us it was wrong, but we would feel it. And it was a lot more substantial back then. It was a huge feeling and a lot louder when we were kids. Was for me anyway. And then I remember going and taking the money, and I went and signed a piece of paper that my friend Wayne's mom had. And I remember signing the piece of paper and just feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm signing my soul away. And I'm signing this paper, and like I got the mini bike, and I'm like, you know what? I'm cool. I just got to get down the tracks. And we had tracks behind Jefferson Farms. There used to be railroad tracks back there, and we would ride mini bikes and catch turtles and play manhunt and stuff like that. And I remember getting down to the tracks and riding a mini bike, and I rode that thing for a total of about 15 minutes. And I felt so horrible. The internal feeling was almost an outward feeling. It was like, it was so hurtful and shameful and so detrimental to me that I threw the mini bike in the grass and the weeds down the side of the tracks, and I ran home. And when I ran home, I was like, you know what, man, I'll feel better if I just gotta get as far away from that thing as possible. And I got as far away from the mini bike as I could. And I get to the mini bike, and Matt Wormer, he's currently deceased, Matt Wormer came over to my house, and I told him where it was, and I was like, yo, go get the mini bike. And I'm, in my head, I'm like, if I do a good deed with the bad deed, I'll feel better. And I gave the mini bike away, and I did not feel any better. So that internal feeling was my God consciousness. But again, back in our day, like if you heard voices, right, then people would say you were nuts. Today I know, like, it depends on what the voice is telling you, and even no matter what it's telling you, I would say it's spiritual. So I had a voice of right and wrong and reasoning and told me, like, don't do this, Matt, and yet I would do it anyway, and I did it so many times after that, and I ignored that loud, almost audible voice and that, oh man, that feeling, that sensation internally, and I ignored it so many times that eventually I stopped feeling it. Not that I only just stopped feeling it, but like it got quieter. It got more dim. The light, I started to pull away from the light. And the more I did that, the less light I seen or felt or heard in my head of that feeling of saying, don't do that. So then at that point, anything became game, Yo, you want to do this? Yeah. Yeah. And I would like, I like started on this mission to like get rid of that feeling. Because what is that? I don't know what that is, but I'm gonna shut that up. I run this. And like it was kind of like me, in all honesty, now I see like God consciousness, and I'm telling God, like, no, I'm not following that way. Although He's given me direction. So I did that so many times that eventually I stopped hearing it and I put my spirit to sleep. And that's how I believe, by doing various things like that, that's how I feel like I put my spirit to sleep. Where I couldn't hear it, and if I could hear it, I didn't listen. So when people came around with drugs and alcohol and doing criminal activities and stuff like that, I kind of was like, cool, let's go. You know, I'm ready to go. Let's do that. So eventually I ended up in prison. I remember I was, and I'll just jump a little bit here. I remember being 15 and I robbed a guy at gunpoint. We beat him up, and then he seen my tattoo. And then I remember the cops came. I got locked up, and I go to juvenile detention center, and I'm in juvie at 15, and I'm being trialed as an adult. And back then it was adult crime, adult time. So if you committed an adult crime, they locked you up and trialed you as an adult. So you went to court with the adults and grown men and stuff like that. And I remember, like, a kid should feel afraid in that situation. And I had shut that fear out. That fear was gone. So I was like, now I got this and I'm not scared of nothing. But although there was a small internal fear in there, I would just shut it up. Like, I got this. And, a kid, a 15-year-old going to court with grown men should be afraid. Yet I'm in court and I'm like, yeah, here I am. Look at me. Selfish ego. Check me out. You know who I am type of dude, So I remember going to, and the same thing happened there. Like, I was violent. I was crazy. I was angry in the juvenile detention center, and I fought all the time. Until eventually they put me on admin say, which is administrative segregation. And what they do is they take you away from the population in any institution, and they'll take you and they can put you in like the hole, described as the hole, and they put you in the hole where they don't have to let you. There is no end date to the hole. They can keep you there permanently. And they segregated me from the population because I always got into fights. And I remember this man, Daryl, came in on 12 to 8 shift, and I'm always locked in my cell, and I came out for 2 reasons: to go to the bathroom and to go to chow, is what they called it. And I remember Daryl came in, big man, and I remember he came in to let me out, and he would come out on 12 to 8 shift, and he would let me out of my cell while everyone was sleeping. And he started to read the word to me. And he started to talk to me about Jesus and God and stuff like that. And although I didn't want to hear none of that mess because I had chalked all that up, and like I would go, I seen stuff that was happening on the news and stuff like that where Catholic priests and stuff like that. And I'm not a Catholic, but back then when I was a Catholic or was raised Catholic, I seen stuff with Catholic priests happen, and we all heard it and stuff like that. And instead of looking at the flaws that a man is flawed and a man is sick too, and he's spiritually sick or whatever's going on, I chalked up the whole God idea, period. It's just not real. So I've been chalked up the idea of God in my life up. But he came in and he spoke to me of Jesus, and he called himself a gospel gangster. And he put Jesus in the terminology of a gangster. And like, I gotta say, man, Jesus was a G, man. He was. He was a G, man. He wrote out for his friends. You're talking about a man who was 33 years old, never traveled any more than 100 miles, and yet he is all over the place. So anyway, he started to speak to me in a terminology that I understood, where it got to me. And something happened to me. I started to listen, although in the beginning, all I wanted to do was get out of the cell. But when he spoke to me of God, I was like, I'm not trying to hear none of this nonsense that this guy's talking about. But he got me out of the cell. Suddenly I would hear it, and something happened to me. I stopped cursing. I stopped being violent. They let me out of this cell. Things started to happen to me, and all of a sudden I'm the unit leader. My charges got dropped back down to family court, and I wasn't being trialed as an adult anymore. And then I ended up eventually going home after a year or so on an 18-month home program. And I tried to follow that way, although I was young and, of course, you know, missing out, and I'm all into this feeling. So I had an experience with God. Something happened to me, and I felt that same internal feeling where, like, I'm in jail, yet I feel good. I'm free. I was in jail and absolutely okay with where I was. I get out, and of course, like, the ways of the world come into play, and I get back with the old homies and like everybody else, and then all of a sudden I'm back to a life of crime, and you know, so many more years in prison after that. 15 years of my life I spent incarcerated, and that's outside of rehabs and institutions. I can't tell you how many years upon years I spent in other facilities. So I lost my way again, and I got involved in drugs and hardcore, and like absolutely was unable to stop for nothing. I got high, and something happened to me again where, like, I was absolutely unable to put it down for any reason. No one could help me. And years and years and years had passed by of trying to seek out help, so I didn't want to be that. So let's discuss the desire, right? The desire to stop doing this was there. I have tried everything. I've tried, like, going to rehabs, detoxes. I tried, not that I tried to go to prison, but I've been in prison and tried all the institutional programs there. I tried mental health. I tried medications. I tried therapy. I tried counseling. I tried biology. I tried science. I tried religion. I even tried to have a kid and think that the kid would make me feel a certain way, and I would change my ways. So the desire to change was there, but I didn't know how to get back to that. Although I had an experience before, I let that experience go and was like, I don't know about that way, because I let that way go. So I get involved in programs and more drugs and stuff like that, and trying all these different ways to have the desire, but I couldn't surrender. I couldn't fully surrender to the fact that I need you, you know, that God was needed in my life. So years and years more, prison, institutions, beaten, brokenness, all the friends I grew up with are dead. You know, you see your family like grow up, you know, you come out of prison and like you end up in this, like there's buildings everywhere, and you don't even know how you got there. And you're like, you know, and your first reaction is like, everybody's grown up now, or your friends are dead. My daughter's like 15, and like, I don't know, you know, I've never really been in her life like that. And like, I remember just being broken. Just broken. I'm strung out on drugs. I'm violent, I'm crazy. I'm always in prison for long, extensive periods of time, and begging, like, I'm done, I'm never gonna, and promising myself and making oaths, and like begging God to come back in my life, and I just couldn't connect. I couldn't connect. And like a lot of people, you know, hopelessness can take you to a lot of good places, and it sounds crazy, but being hopeless and broken was like the best place I've ever been. You know? And it sucks when you're there, but I'm so happy that I've been broken and hopeless. Without that, like, there was no way to connect. And I thought like hopelessness was like sitting at a table. I got my girlfriend with my girlfriend, and I got all the drugs and the substances that I want, that I think is going to make me happy. I got money. Everything I want is right here at the table. It's sitting right here at the table. And I remember it just wasn't working anymore. There was no relief. And I remember getting up from the table and saying, this ain't working no more. And everybody looked at me like I was crazy, but they didn't understand, like I was hopeless. But coming to a more hopeless state of knowing that God was the solution, knowing that I had to connect with that power, knowing that I needed help and knowing where to go, trying to go there and still couldn't connect, trying to find and seek out God and couldn't. That was hopeless. Man, that was a bad place to be. And I remember coming down here into Florida in 2016, and me and my significant other came down here, Crystal Ann Lachette. I love you, baby. And I remember we came down here together and, you know, using in and out and stuff like that. And finally we came back down here and just looking for relief anywhere because there wasn't real stuff anywhere. So I went anywhere I could to seek out relief. And I ended up in a facility. Her and I was at the same facility. And I remember just knowing I have tried absolutely everything and nothing has worked. And I remember this guy coming in and starting to read this book with me. And I was just like, man, I'm not trying to, but I knew that every other way that I had tried did not work for me. I remember being in meetings. I go to 12-step fellowships. I'm a 12-step guy. I work a solid program. I help others. I sponsor guys. I carry the message. I do. The 12 steps is 100% saved my life, but how I got there. So this guy's reading the book with me, and he's trying to take me through the work, and I remember being dead, literally dead so many times. And I remember like waking up in the hospital after a overdose, and waking up and like I'm in Good Samaritan Hospital right down the street from where I am right now. I could walk there. And I remember going in there, not voluntarily I remember waking up in there, and the doctor's just telling me like, hey man, you know, what's going on? I'm like, whoa, what's happening? What's happening? And I knew that my friend was with me, and I was like, where's Shane at? And they told me that he was gone, and my friend and I OD'd together, and I woke up and he didn't. And you would think that would be enough. And I remember the doctors would just get my vitals stable and send me on my way. And I get out, and immediately my first thought was, talking about caught up in the grips of addiction, man, and the madness. Like, I remember my first thought was like, where's my wallet at? I just lost my friend. And my thoughts are telling me you need more. And I get it, I go to this, I go home, do the same thing, and I'm back in the hospital 6 hours later, flatline, completely gone. And they got me up, they were hitting me with adrenaline shots and Narcan and whatever else they hit you with and all this other stuff, and I came to, and I was so afraid, so scared. I was like in between worlds. Even when I woke up, I knew I was still dying. I knew I was. I remember being in that position and telling the doctor, please help me, man. You got to help me, like I'm dying. And she just shook her head. And then when this guy was reading to me about the doctor's opinion, right, and the literature that I follow, and he was talking to me about the doctor and how, like, if a doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. And, like, they don't know how to help. They have no solution to the problem. And that was a huge thing for me when that happened. And I remember waking up being in two worlds, and I'm holding on to Crystal, and I'm saying, baby, I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it. And some guy walking by me and saying, no, you're not. And I know that was spiritual. And I was afraid to die. And I got out and I used again. And at that moment, I knew when he read me that part in the doctor's opinion that, like, I am beyond human aid. What haven't I tried yet? I've tried counseling, detox, therapy, everything, you know, but I haven't tried to work this 12 steps. And I have to tell you, let me just cut it to you straight, you know. The 12 steps is all about him. This whole program, the whole 12-step program came from some Bible-token Christians, man. You know, and that's just where it came from. That's the bottom line of it. That's the truth of it. You know, do your own research. So, when I read the doctor's opinion, it struck me about Paul. And Paul in the Bible name is Saul. Paul was really Saul. And Saul was a Pharisee, which is a Jewish leader, a Jewish teacher. That's what they did. Like, they followed the law. They wanted to follow the law. So when this man who had status, he had reputation, he had money, he had everything he wanted, he fell off the horse. He had an experience. A spiritual experience had happened to him. He fell off the horse, was blinded, and knew at that moment something happened to me. And he left everything behind to follow this way. He risked it all. He's been stoned. He's been beaten. They did everything. And he wasn't going back and trying to be a a-hole and saying, yo, man, you better follow this way. He was going back to his people, the Jewish people, to try to tell them that this is the way. I'm trying to save you because you guys are my family. You're my brothers. I need you. So that's what, like, the doctor did. In the doctor's opinion, he risked it all by telling us we don't have an answer. But thank God he did that, because that led me to believe that if none of y'all have the answer, if that place, her, money, or none of that stuff has an answer, then where do I go? You know? So I remember they took us to church. Not long after he read me the doctor's opinion. And they took me to a church. And I remember sitting in the church. And at this point, I had studied so many different religions from Islam and practiced these things. I studied Islam. I studied astrology, science, Catholicism. You name it, and I've done it. You know, I tried to study everything until I just kind of like messed with my concept that God was up, where I just couldn't pick a conception of God. Although I had evidence, I had a demonstration of what happens to me when I follow Jesus, right? I had a demonstration of what happens to me as a youth, yet I tried every other way and go around it. And I ended up beaten and broken and hopeless again. And I ended up in this position of like, what do I do? And I remember right before we went to the church, they took us to the church, and right before that, I was just like thinking of all the stuff that I did and all the ways that I tried to find God and why am I going to church? And I went there, and the man, Pastor Daniel was his name, and he carried a message. And I swear, I go to a church where there's thousands of people. And this guy carried a message to me. Everybody in that room disappeared. He spoke about counterfeit. He said, don't fall for the counterfeit. And then he started to talk about Islam and how they say everybody, we're all talking, and I'm not saying nothing bad about anything, because we're all talking about the Creator. Every religion is talking about the Creator, but man always separates everything to make us different or to stand out or whatever, because we got these ego things and what we follow is the right way and your way is the wrong way, but we're all talking about the Creator. Jewish people are talking about the Creator. They talk about the Creator because you got the Creator of, they followed the law. They followed the law. Moses brought the law. You had the 10 Commandments and stuff like that, and they tried to follow the law. And then when Jesus came, he was letting us know, can't nobody follow the law. Just like, for instance, when we got the story in the Bible where she was about to be stoned, and Jesus said, the one without sin throw the first stone. And they all dropped their rocks. Because nobody is without. You can't follow the law. The law is there for you to be conscious of your sin, is what he told them. Nobody can follow the law. You sit there and with your little status and your Pharisees and stuff like that, like you're better than everybody else, but you sin too. We're all sinners. No one can follow the law. I would love to be a saint. I wish I could get to that status, you know? To be like Jesus and like that, have no sin or anything. So he's talking about Islam. And Islam, they believe in Jesus. And all is crazy because all of them, you got the Jewish people who believe that the Messiah hasn't came yet. You got Islam who believes that Jesus just wasn't God, he was a prophet, yet he walked the earth. And then you got Christians who, and you know what we believe, you know. Yet the whole common denominator and everything is Jesus. For me, it's Jesus. It's the common denominator in all of them. And we're all talking about the same dude. There's no the creator of heavens and earth is the same creator as heaven and earth in a different religion. We're talking about the same dude. I don't want to separate myself and like act like, oh man, I'll pray with anybody. I don't care what your religious affiliations are. If you believe in the creator, cool. Me, I believe in Jesus and I walk with him. So he spoke that day. And I started to come to the conclusion of knowing he was speaking to me. And I remember just crying and bawling my eyes out, man. And I was holding Crystal's hand and I was just crying. And she was like, baby, what? And she said, is it Eddie? Because I had just lost my brother. My brother, she's like, my brother, he got murdered. And I was like, yeah. And I just remember, and I'm not talking about like self-pity stuff. I'm talking about just having this feeling of like all my friends are gone. And they were much better people than I am. They're much better people than I was. Why am I here and they're not? And I don't remember, like I wasn't sad. I just felt like an overwhelming feeling of grace and mercy. Mercy, right? Knowing grace and mercy, knowing I don't deserve it and you forgive me. He forgave me. And I felt chosen. I felt chosen at that moment. I was just like, man, he chose me. Thank you for choosing me. And it's still unbelievable to me that he chose me. Thank you. Thank you for choosing me. My life was like, I just destroyed everything. I didn't care about anybody. If it wasn't about me, I don't care about you, man. Get out my face. And like I chose that day. I looked around me and I seen all these people with their hands in the air and they were happy. And although my conception of God was distorted, I looked around and I seen all these people happy. And I said, I don't care if they're wrong. I don't even care if they're wrong. I just want to feel like that. I was so tired of being broken. And I looked around and I chose that day. And I said to myself, God, I'm going to go wherever you want me to go. And I'm going to do whatever you want me to do. And since then, man, I was able to work the process and clear the blockage out through the step work of how I was blocking God out of my life. I've restored continuity with him. I have a mate. My dad today is my best friend. And I remember just sitting in that place, man, and knowing that like I was saved. I was saved and he chose me to carry his message. And who better to sacrifice my life for than the one who gave it to me? So I remember I went to jail looking for God so many times, man. So many times. 15 years in prison I spent looking for God in different ways and religions and just couldn't connect. And now I was connected, and 4 months into being sober, I went to jail again for some business stuff down here, and something unbelievable happened. I used to go to jail looking for God, and this time I went to jail and I brought him with me. He was with me in jail and I was okay. 7 months in, and I have to explain this to you, what the Spirit does and how we wake up. So my spirit is starting to wake up. And I'm starting to let go of selfishness, self-centered ways, and pride and ego. And like I'm trying to get away from that stuff. And something started to happen to me where like other people and doing God's work was much more important than anything I could ever want. And I felt the sense that anything that he had for me is, infinitely better than what I want for myself. And Crystal passed away in 7 months. And I still miss her all the time. She like tried to follow a different way, a way that I had followed so many times before. And I didn't know what to do. I had to step back. I knew the way she went, and all I could do was like live it through a demonstration. That's all I could do. That's all any of us can do. There's nothing more powerful than the demonstration that our spirit works through other people. The demonstration of what happens. I remember waking up and feeling disconnected. And I was like, God, please, I need you in my life. I need to feel you. Because when you first wake up spiritually, you get scared. You're afraid when you don't feel God. Like if you're feeling God for like a couple months straight, like it's just you're super connected, and some people call it pink clouds. I call it God. And I'm sitting there connected, and then all of a sudden one day I wake up and I don't feel connected. I feel like I lost him, and I get scared. So I started to pray, and I was like, God, please don't leave me. Please. And that was the scariest feeling of like, I don't ever want to lose you again. 26 years it took me to get back to you. I'll do whatever you, man, please, whatever you want. Just don't leave me. And he never left. And I remember waking up disconnected, and I called my brother who's spiritually awake as well. And I was like, yo, bro, I'm scared. I don't feel him. And he was like, man, God's always with you, Matt. He's always with you. And I remember taking a ride that day, and me and my friends got in my old beat up white rape van. And we took a spin, and we went out just looking for stuff to do, people to help, man. Because I'm waking up, and like I just wanted to help people, man. To give people what has been given to me through the step work and finding that power. So we get in the van, and we see this come to a red light, and this old lady's walking across Military Trail down here in West Palm, Lantana, Florida. And I told my boys while I was at the red light, I said, go out and help her. So they go out and they try to help. I'm talking about very old, fragile, hair matted, dreaded, and like this old, little, tiny, frail, 90-year-old white lady pushing a cart. And I was like, go help her across the street, man. And I pulled into the gas station, and they was talking to her. And now looking back at it, it had to be a strange scene. You got 3 young men trying to convince this little old lady to get into this big white beat up rape van, trying to convince her to get into this van. It must have been a disturbing look, and we all looked like we just got out of prison, and I was just out of prison. And she was like, ma'am, can we give you a ride? Like, let us give you a ride. You shouldn't be walking, you know? And she was like, no, I'm okay. I was like, can we get you something to eat? Is there something we can get you? She said, no, I'm fine. So 3 hours later, we get out of a meeting, a 12-step meeting that I attend regularly. And we come out of the meeting, and the lady, we're talking about 3 hours down the road from walking. She had to walk quite a bit of miles, and she was still walking. And I sensed this overpowering urge to pull over. I pulled over, and I made another approach. I said, ma'am, please, let us give you a ride. Do you have a place to stay? Do you want to stay with us? And she's like, no, I'm fine. I said, well, can I give you a hug? And I gave her this hug, and this old lady's hugging me, and I'm hugging her, man, and she's crying, and she's like, no one held me in 20 years. And I was just like, man, thank you, God, for allowing it to be me. And I remember wanting to get her some shoes because she wasn't going to take no ride. She said, I live right there, pointing to a place that I knew she didn't live at. And I remember saying to myself, if I just had some money, I'd buy her some shoes. So that day when I woke up and I was disconnected, and I felt horrible. I take a ride in my white van again, and this time we see the little old lady walking down the street on Military again. And this time we had $54. And we went and bought her some shoes, and we put the shoes on her feet and stuff. And it was just an amazing, beautiful thing. And she was just like, thank you, thank you. The next time you see me, I'll have these shoes on. And I got in the van, and although I still didn't feel connected, I understood. Something hit me, and it was like, oh my gosh. And my boy was like, what? And I was like, sometimes we don't feel God all the time because we're the ones talking for him. We're not getting messages all the time because sometimes we're the ones who are carrying the message. He's using us to carry the message. So another time, a guy comes up to me, and I'm on Military Trail again, the same plan. I'm stuck in traffic, and I'm talking about God. Listen, I pray to God, and my prayers have been answered so specifically, so unbelievably specifically. Now that I'm waking up and I do his work the best I can, stuff like this happens. I'm stuck on Military again, traffic both ways, and I look over, and there's this young Spanish guy next to me, and he's yelling at me. He's like, yo, my man. Yo, and he got like this angry face on, and like I wasn't like the best dude at the time, so I'm like, man, and I'm trying to ignore him because I'm trying to be spiritual. And I'm just like ignoring this dude. And like, he's like, yo, my man, I know you hear me. Yo, my man. And I'm sitting there like, man, this dude has no idea what I'm about to do to him. And this is just the thought process. And I finally look at him and I said, what's up, man? What's up? And he said, I got a message for you. And now I'm getting like upset and angry. And I said, what's your message, man? Tell me what your message is. And he said, Jesus loves you, man. My prayer that morning was, God, please, I need to hear you. I don't want to just feel you today. Like, please, I need to hear your voice. Please talk to me. I swear to you, that was my prayer that morning. And here's this guy that he used to say, yo, man, Jesus loves you, out in the middle of nowhere, stuck in traffic. I was blown away. Blown away. I don't ever want to be asleep. So when I made my, let me see how much time I got. When I made my time with God, or when I gave my life up, it had to be when Crystal passed away. And when she passed away is the most devastating thing in the world that happened to me. And I remember feeling her. I don't care what nobody says. I've had many interactions with the Spirit, so I know. I have undeniable evidence that Jesus exists and exists in my life. Undeniable evidence for me. And when she passed away, I felt it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like something's going wrong. And I tried to call her phone, and it went straight to voicemail. And I got scared, and I texted her friend. I said, please tell me Crystal's okay. She said, no, Matt, she passed away last night. And I was... I was just destroyed. Just destroyed, like... The demonstration ain't going to work through this one. You know? My demonstration isn't enough to save her. And I remember like feeling her, I felt her tell me, Matt, I'm scared, I don't know where I'm at. And I remember telling her, Jesus will find you, like you can find him there, he's there too. You can find God there, trust me, babe. And I'm talking to her. And I felt her comfort by me talking to her. And I got on my knees and I prayed the most sincere prayer I ever prayed in my life. And I said, God, take her. Take her. I'll do whatever you want me to do for the rest of my life. I'll go wherever you want me to go, and I'll do whatever you want me to do. Just take her. And an hour later, I'm telling you, man, that dude is amazing. An hour later, I get this feeling of check your messages. And I'm like, check my messages. So I check her and I's text message. And she sent me this picture with the sun beaming through. It's still in my phone. The sun beaming through the clouds. And it said, wow. And it was on our way back from Hurricane Irma. And I was like, wow, man. Like, the only way you can appreciate something like that is if you have some type of connection. And I kept reading it, and I said, awesome, where are you at? And this is before she passed away, but it didn't make no sense to me when we had this conversation, but now it made all the sense after the prayer that I had prayed. I said, awesome, where are you at? And she said, somewhere over the rainbow, silly. And I said, awesome, is there bright blue skies? And she said, yup, and the grass is way greener too. And I was like, man, thank you, man, thank you. Thank you. He showed me he took her. He showed me. He answered my prayer. And now it's time for me to hold up to my end of the bargain, man. I'll go wherever you want me to go, and I'll do whatever you want me to do. And I mean that. Right now. I mean that. Where you want me at, God? Move me. Move me wherever you want me to move me, man. And it's the most unbelievable life I've ever lived, man. Of trying to wake other people up to that idea. And like, recovery's so cool. And like, people go to church all the time and we praise Jesus, and some people go to church for various reasons. But usually when you go to church, you know what you're looking for. You're knowing who you're trying to connect with. But there's kind of like just following. Some people just go to church and, you know, they end up there and stuff like that. But you know you're going to church looking for God. In recovery, we help people find God that ain't even looking for him. It's amazing. What an amazing thing to do, man. To be able to help people and advocate for him. For people that ain't even looking. So, I have to say, man, my life is nothing short of amazing, man, today. And like, I spent my whole life trying to fix everything out here. And if I just get enough of this or enough of her or do this, I would feel centered and be okay. And I've had those things. So I'm not telling you from a aspect of someone who didn't have things to tell you those things don't work. I'm a person that had things that is telling you those things didn't work. They did nothing for in here. But now that I have God in my life and I work the program and I let go of all this ego and selfishness and self-centeredness, or I try to on a regular basis, and I walk in God's light and I try to carry God's message and I go where he plants me and I do what he tells me to do, and I try to anyway. It's a lot of time. I wish we had like a text message, like I had a phone for God, you know what I mean? I got two phones. I wish he was on the other one and he was just like, yo, Matt, I need you over here, make two lefts and a right. I wish it was like that, because I would do that. My life is not mine anymore. And thank God for that. Because my life being mine sucked. Straight up. So, my dad's my best friend. I have a relationship with my daughter today. My grass is cut. My neighbors, I help out. We all know each other. Like, there's no police attendants at my house. The police raids and the task force aren't showing up at my mom's house with shotguns and telling everybody to lay down. I'm not violent and angry anymore. Although I do get that way when I'm playing basketball sometimes, which I'm a lot better with. Like, I have relationships with people I've never thought I'd have relationships for. And like, I remember praying to the dark side, man. I remember like walking that way and being okay with that and praying to the dark side, you know, and coming from that to this. Like I remember praying on the dark side and like having this crew of people and having this respect and this reputation that Mr. Eldriff is familiar with more than most. And I'd spent my life building and establishing this relationship between this minute, small group of people. And now, like, I work for God and I turn to the light, man. Unbelievable things happen and I get to help everybody. And a lot of people have problems with the issue of God. So let me say this. Let me end with this story. You have an aunt, right? And I remember going to this meeting. And there's an ant on the floor every time I go to this meeting. And I remember going, it's at the AR center. I remember going to save the ant. And like I'm always trying to like swindle the ant on something. He won't get on my finger. So I get a piece of paper and then like the ant's like doing NFL moves to try to get away from me. But yet I get the ant and I take him outside. And I did that like 3 or 4 times. I saved an ant. It's just one ant always by itself. And I saved it. And on like the 3rd or 4th time, I thought to myself, I wonder what the ant is thinking. And then I was like, okay, let me see what the ant's thinking. And I put myself in the ant's shoes, and the ant's probably pissed. He's probably like, this mother done took me off of my place. He done took me outside. I don't know where I am. I'm away from my family. Where's no food out here? I'm broke, lost. He has no idea where he is, and he's pissed. But the ant's thinking and my thinking ain't the same, just like Jesus said. Just like God told us, my thinking and your thinking is not alike, nor are my ways your ways. And just like the ant's ways and my ways ain't the same, he has no idea that I took him outside because 50 people were about to walk into the meeting and trample him and kill him. I gave him another shot at life, and sometimes that's how my life is. I think it looks like it sucks and it feels like it sucks, but the truth is, his plan is always better than my plan, just like my plan for the ant was much better than his plan for himself. Only difference is my thinking to the ant's thinking is nothing compared to God's thinking and my thinking. His plan for me is infinitely greater than my plan for myself. So even when things look bad and they ain't going your way, just remember, he's got you. And he puts you in a position that you can't put yourself in. I remember saving these ducks, man, and they always came to the light. They were stuck in a tunnel, but they followed the light. And that's what I do today. I follow the light. And as long as I follow the light, man, I can't go wrong no matter what happens. And I know what happens to people who carry the message and carry a powerful message. It happened to all of them. Look at history. And I'm willing to do that. I'll take that to my grave. I'll take it to my grave, man. I'll do your work until the end of the day, and the end of times, and the end of my days. So thank you for being with us, man. And I hope you got something from that. And just a beautiful day, man. And praise God that we're all here, man. And in Jesus' name, I hope everybody finds the same stuff that I have found. You know, God bless y'all and have a good day.